Welcome to another book club session. We are currently reading How to Do the Work by Dr. Nicole LePera. We are doing all things healing. I am on this healing journey from my own childhood trauma from abusive relationships, trauma from all the things, pretty much from childhood through my 20s. And I'm taking you along on the journey. So if you're part of the community, you are probably finding this on replay. If you're not part of the private community, you can go join it. The link is in my bio. And you get to see the replays and join me live on these Zooms. Right now I am streaming to TikTok, but if anybody from the community pops on live, I will end the stream on TikTok because this is meant to be a safe place so that everybody can be vulnerable. I'm okay with being vulnerable with everybody, but all of our members might not be. So I will end the public stream if anybody joins. The way this works is we're going to review some key lessons from the readings for this week. We're going to do some reflection, like what do these lessons mean? What were like the key takeaways? We're going to do an action assignment. So like how can we take what we're learning and bring it to action? And then we're going to set some intention. So like how do we take these lessons and bring it into our life? How do we make sure that we're not just reading this to read it and go on with doing things the way that we do them. If you know anything about my journey, then you know that I haven't read any of the parenting books that are out there. My parenting advice comes from me doing my personal growth work and then realizing that these are lessons that I want my kids to have ingrained in them now, rather than having to learn them at almost 33 years old. And so it's really important to me that we're not just reading these books and reading, like I want to read them and I want to think about what does this mean? How do we apply it? How do we heal? Because that's really where the power is, right? And because of that, this session was supposed to be for the entire chapter 3, which is titled A New Theory of Trauma. But I personally didn't even get through all of chapter 3 this week. I feel like I slowed down a little bit on my reading because I'm still trying to implement the lessons from chapter 2, which is really to like find places in your day to be present. And I'll talk about that real quick before we jump into chapter 3. So I'm still sort of trying to implement that. So I don't want to get too deep into chapter 3. But anyway, I do have some awesome lessons to share, some really good mindset shifts. But let's reverse a little bit to kind of chapter 2 and the key takeaway and what we're practicing on there. And you can feel free to share inside of the book club in the community, like what your experience has been. But chapter 2 sort of challenged us to become present in certain moments throughout our life because we are constantly in this autopilot, right? So I don't know if this happens to you, but it happens to me all the time. Like, you know how when you're driving and you're supposed to be going to Walmart, but usually every day you go to the gym at that time. So all of a sudden, like you wind up at the gym and you're like, how the heck did I even get here? I don't even remember driving here, right? I'm not supposed to be here. Like you kind of like zone out. I get that like a lot, like in general in my life. Like I'll even just be like in the shower and I'll be like, I washed my hair already? Like when did I wash my hair? And like I zone out. And it really has to do with like being in that autopilot. Like you're just going, but you're not really being intentional about it. And so chapter 2 had challenged us to be like really present in certain moments, to just stop and experience like what is going on around me, what are the sensations in my body, like what does my body feel like what does the water, you know, in the shower feel like on my skin, like what is this moment with my kids feel like, you know, not really objectively or logically looking at the scene, but really like feeling what's going on. And as I've been trying to do that, it's like, man, I am such an overthinker. Like I will be like, okay, let me be present. I'm washing the dishes, right? Like, let me be present right here. Like what's going on? Like the window's open. I can hear the kids playing outside, you know, like the water's on and I feel the soap and like, I got you, right? But like I immediately start judging, like, how come I'm not present more? How come this feels so weird to me to be present? Like I'm immediately like judging myself. Like I'm trying to be in the moment, but then I'm like judging myself in the moment. And then I'm judging myself for judging myself in the moment. So this has been a really hard thing for me to work on. I don't know if anybody else has been trying it or has experienced that, but it's really crazy. Like you would think that's such a simple thing, like just be in the moment. But when your mind, I don't know if anybody else has like a constant, like your mind is constantly going, it's really freaking hard to do that. So I'm still kind of working on that and working on showing myself grace with that. I also have noticed, and I guess we'll just do a little bit of reflection first. I've also noticed that since we started, I've been able to make some shifts that I haven't been able to make for like years. And I don't know if it's necessarily like the content in the book or if it's just good morning, if it's just the like me putting the intention and saying like I'm ready to heal. I'm ready to do for me. I'm ready to like move forward. My youngest is almost 2 years old. My body feels healed. Not that there should be a timeline on it. It's just like my body at this point, like I don't feel like I'm in recovery anymore. For some reason, I know they put you back to work at like 8 weeks after a C-section, but I got to be honest, up until a couple of weeks ago, I still feel like recovery in my body after my C-sections. And so for some reason, the shift of saying like, okay, I'm ready to do the work. I've got the book. I'm doing the book club. I've started doing journaling. I've been able to make a lot of shifts. And I'll share with you a couple of them if you're interested, just so maybe you can witness it in your life. Because I think sometimes we don't give ourselves enough credit for the shifts. But for as long as I can remember, I've always time blocked my entire days. I feel this, especially recently, stay-at-home mom life is so amazing for inner work. Yeah. You definitely have time, but the mental space there is really hard for inner work. But some shifts that I've made is like I used to time block literally like every single day. What time am I going to eat breakfast? What time am I going to shower? What time am I going to work? What time am I going to do school with the kids? What time am I going to run errands? What time, like literally everything. What time am I going to journal? And I also had a running like chore list, like these chores need to get done like on this day, period. And people would always look at that externally and be like, you're so organized, you're so on top of everything. But really, as I'm kind of coming to find out, is that like that's like control. Like I am looking to control as much as I can because it makes me feel safe, because I need the stability to feel safe. And it's funny because those things like having such control over my calendar, such control over my task list, it really wasn't working for me. It hasn't been working for me for a long time. I reach burnout very quickly. It's really frustrating when the calendar says you should be eating breakfast, but you're not hungry right now, but you can't eat breakfast later because that would interrupt on some other kind of time, right? Like it doesn't really work. Thank you. Have an awesome day as well. So like releasing that control, I've gotten rid of all of my time blocks. I started slow, but I've gotten rid of all of my time blocks. I changed my chore thing because it's really important to me to like keep on top of like things in the house. I feel like because I've stepped back from my job and my businesses, I really take pride in like what I'm doing in the house. And so that's sort of like, it's important to me. So I still have a checklist that tells me like all the things that need to get done because I don't want it all floating in my head, but it's not as stringent of like, oh, it's Tuesday, October, whatever, you need to do these things, even if your day doesn't allow for it or your energy level doesn't allow for it, right? So I've kind of like shifted that. I have also been sort of paying a little bit more attention to my nutrition, and I've been more consistent with like moving my body. And so it's interesting how those shifts happen, like just from getting into that mindset of, okay, I'm ready to heal. I'm ready to do for me. I'm ready to like, I'm just ready to look at this. I'm ready to bring light to this. And so that's kind of where I've been. So let's talk about kind of some of the things that were brought up in the beginning part of chapter 3. Like I said, I haven't even gotten through the whole thing. So we talk about sort of like intuition. Let me just read this before I read it to you. So in this particular passage that I'm going to read to you, they're talking about a woman. She's talking about a woman who was kind of like abused. She was abused, and she's sort of like leaving her body to sort of like escape from this abuse. And they talk about how like that disassociation can happen with all types of abuse, whether it's physical abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse. When you start like leaving your body almost to cope with it, to be safe, you sort of start like learning not to trust yourself, right? Like I need to escape even myself. And I know that I find myself in that position because I used to brag about how high my pain tolerance was and how like, just like how I could handle anything and I wouldn't cry and I wouldn't show pain and it's because like literally I used to brag about this, like I can literally like leave my body. And so just to like give an example of that, I had gone through this procedure. It was like an OB procedure. And I kept telling them, I'm like, you have to put me under because the local anesthetic is not going to work. It doesn't work for me. They don't believe you, whatever. Okay, fine. Maybe I'm just crazy. Eventually you just give in to them, right? Well, in the middle of this procedure, not only the equipment broke, but my anesthetic didn't work. And so I literally went through this procedure where they were clipping out like pieces of my cervix, okay, with no anesthetic, with no, like, it was horrific. It was literally horrific. And I was just like, fuck, like this. And like the whole time. And the nurse is like looking at me and she's like, how are you not like passed out from the pain? And like after the whole thing, it was very traumatizing, but after the whole thing I was like, well, I can just like leave my body. And she's like, what? And I was like, yeah, like I can just kind of like get my mind out of the pain, so like my body is still feeling the pain but my mind is not feeling the pain. And I like really would boast this as like a skill, but it's not a skill. It is a coping mechanism. And what winds up happening, and let me just read this passage. So it says, repeatedly disconnecting from her intuition, she eventually learned that she could not trust herself, instead looking to the thoughts, beliefs, and opinions of others. And so that's so true. So when you start to feel like you can't trust yourself, I don't know if this experience is real because I so easily disconnect from it. I don't know what I'm feeling in this experience because instead of listening to my mind and my body and my intuition, I'm sort of pushing it aside. I'm looking to others to kind of look to me like, should I be okay after that experience? Like, should I be feeling sad after that? Like, is it acceptable to be disappointed right now? And you sort of start to gauge your emotions and your feelings off of the other people around you instead of just listening to yourself. And that is why, and we can tie that back into parenting. That is why with my kids, it's so important to me that I teach them to listen to their bodies, even when I don't agree. So when they say, they're doing something that looks unsafe to me, they're balancing on something or they're swinging on something, it's very hard, but to try to get out of the habit of being like, be careful, get down, you're going to hurt yourself. And instead saying like, how does your body feel? Does your body feel safe? Okay. And then being there for support. So if they do fall down and get hurt, you're there to support them through it. Because you want them to trust their intuition. Even something as simple as I did a video on like letting your kid put the ketchup on their plate. I know it sounds so silly, but when you allow them to just do for themselves, hey, you make this decision. You put how much ketchup you think you need on your plate, right? They can follow their intuition. And now initially, and we kind of talked about this, but initially they might, if you've never given them that freedom before, they might use the whole bottle of ketchup, right? But once they learn that, okay, mom is going to consistently let me trust my intuition, I don't need to freak out and do it all in one shot, right? You'd be surprised on how much you can trust them, and they'll be surprised on how much they can trust themselves. And that's really where you start to teach them these big lessons, right? We want to teach them the lessons that we're learning now, one of those lessons is like, you can trust yourself. You can listen to your intuition. You can listen to what feels right. We've been talking about that a lot when we go like to public places. So it's confusing for kids. I get it. And I don't know, some people maybe think this is too much, but before we go to a really crowded place, now that Zoe's getting bigger, she's not always required to like hold my hand and stay right near me. When we go to a park, she wants to go and play. She's 5 years old. When we go to the arcade, she wants to go and play. So before we get there, I'll set some ground rules. And so we talk about, okay, listen, like if you're by the slides and then you want to go by the swings, you just have to tell me. I'm not going to say no. You just have to come tell me so I know what part of the playground you're at, because I am holding Emma's hand and helping Emma, and I need to be able to look up and find you. And then I always tell her too, if somebody like touches your body, you can, scream, yell, kick, hit, whatever. And so Zoe says to me, but Mom, what if I want to be their friend? Because she's thinking anybody that you don't know, right? So like, even if a kid says, hey, you want to play tag or something, right? So then I had to switch that to start telling her, listen, if or a good example, the other day, there was a bunch of kids on a swing and there was an old man and he was helping the kids get onto the swing. So like in that case, a stranger touched your body, but he was putting you up on the swing, right, to play with all the other kids. So no, you're not going to scream, hit, and kick him. You asked him to help you. So that's where we really start. I'm even learning, like we really start to teach our kids about listening to their intuition. If something feels icky, if something feels like you're unsure, if something feels like you don't want it, or if you say stop, I teach my daughter stop, right? Stop. I don't like that. Stop. Don't do that again. And they disrespect that, then you kick, hit, stomp, whatever. But really teaching them to listen to their intuition, because you don't want them looking to you every time they need to make a decision to say, okay, is this safe? Is my body safe? Is my mind safe? Because you're not always going to be standing right there. So you want them to trust themselves in that. We talk a lot in chapter 3 about trauma and what trauma means. I don't have any specific passages for you, but I want to kind of tell you what I've been learning and what I keep telling myself. A lot of times I will, and I did for many years, now you hear me saying the word trauma, you hear me saying the word healing, but for a very long time, I would not say that. I would just maybe say like, yeah, my past was kind of stressful, because I would think, other people have it worse. Other people have gone through worse. Other people have had, things that are really traumatic. And my trauma, it's laughable to me, because I feel like no matter how much trauma you have, because I have childhood trauma, I have, very abusive relationship trauma, I have sexual trauma, I have all of these traumas that I can now call traumas. But you minimize it. And I feel like even people who I would look at and say, wow, you have worse trauma than I do, would say, no, my trauma is not that bad. Other people have worse. Like we always minimize our own stuff. And so we talk a little bit in chapter 3 about the fact that like, basically trauma is something that like affects your nervous system. Like it doesn't have to be one specific event that like changes the whole trajectory of your life. Like trauma is, your body's response to these things that are happening to you. It can be certain stressful events in your childhood. It could be the fact that you were held to such a high standard as a kid, and now you can't snap out of that in adulthood. Like it can be because you were always shamed in childhood about how much you weighed and what you were eating, and now in adulthood you don't feel comfortable in your own body, right? These are like things that carry with us. So whatever you feel like you're healing from, we kind of like step 1 is to just say, this is enough. Like I don't need to compare my trauma with somebody else's trauma. I don't need to justify my trauma and why I call it trauma and why it was traumatic to me, and why every time I, look at something or am in a certain situation, my body reacts like it's 15 years ago and I'm back in this traumatic event. We don't have to justify that to anybody. And I think one thing that really helped me on this healing journey, and I think why I've been able to heal more now than I ever have in the past, is because aside from talking to you about it, I've been pretty quiet. I've been pretty quiet about what I think I'm healing from, kind of what events were traumatic to me, um, what I think is translating into adulthood from that, right? I've been a little bit more quiet about it. And I feel like when you're a little more quiet about it, not to say don't reach out for help if you need help, but when you stop like justifying it to people, justifying and saying, well, this was traumatic and I know it was traumatic because of this and I know it's not as traumatic as those things, and you stop that, stop minimizing it, stop justifying it, and you just say like, this doesn't feel right in my body. I don't like how this went down and this is affecting me now, and now I need to heal from it. Now I'm ready to heal from it. You will experience that shift. So let's see if I could pull one more thing from here. Oh, this I really liked. I think you guys will like this. Let me read this passage. I think you'll really like this. And then I can take some questions, I think. And we'll talk about how we're going to implement these lessons in the coming week. So this is talking about what the parent's role should be in raising children. And it's interesting to me because like this is sort of talking about it because we're seeing like we should have had this kind of relationship with our parents in the past, right? But the truth is, if you're here, you're probably trying to make sure that you have a healthy relationship with your child so that they're not healing in the future. And so this is so relevant to us. Like this is sort of like what we're striving for. And I love it because this is like a professional saying that the things that we're doing here, what we're striving for here, is going to work and is sort of like the right way. We could say that. Okay, so a parent figure's role is to be a guide. A loving parental relationship provides a secure base for a child to return to as they venture out into life, with all of the ups and downs associated with this great transition. A guide is largely non-judgmental, allowing the child to exist as they are. A guide is more likely to observe and act from a state of awareness and wisdom. This allows the child to experience the natural consequences of their actions without intervention and laying the foundation for them to build self-trust. Think of the guide as a wise teacher, someone who has faith in the foundation they have provided and trust that the students will be able to weather what life brings. The child then internalizes this faith. This doesn't mean the child avoids pain, loss, anger, or grief, the wide array of human feelings. Instead, the guide or parent figure has provided a base of security and resilience for the child to return to when hard times come. And I sink and love this because it's so true. A lot of times as parents, we try to control more than we try to guide. And I feel like, and I saw this in my own parenting journey, and I see it in people around me, when you try to controlling another human is so unnatural that it feels stressful. Telling them who to be, what they should like, what they should do, how to listen to their own instincts. Like it's stressful and you're always in a power struggle because you're not meant to control another human being. You are meant to guide your children. That doesn't mean that there can't be boundaries. That doesn't mean that there can't be rules. That doesn't mean that you don't, like stop them from running in front of a train or a car, which is what everybody likes to comment on my videos. Stop them from playing with a kitchen knife when they're 1 year old, right? People like to go to extremes. It doesn't mean that. It means that you lay a foundation that is built on connection and trust and the child's ability to trust themselves. And you give the child responsibility. You let them know that you trust them. You don't question them on everything that they do. You don't correct them on everything that they do. You don't call them bad and speak about them like they're a burden, right? When you set that foundation, as the child grows and can have more responsibility and naturally just takes more responsibility, because whether we like it or not, we're growing up adults, right? We're raising adults. Eventually, they're just going to leave, even if we're not ready for it. They know that they can come back to this foundation. That foundation is going to stick with them for their whole life. And so I love that passage. I love that sort of mission for our community, to really see ourselves as more of the guide, allow our children to have those freedoms, allow our children to explore who they are, give them guidance, give them freedom, let them know that we trust them and that they should trust themselves, teach them how to trust their own body. And here's the kicker. If you're here and you're in, trauma healing book club, you're probably learning those lessons yourself. You're probably learning how to trust your own emotions. You're probably learning how to express your emotions, how to listen to your intuition, how to connect in the moment. I know I am. So as we learn these lessons, I just want to tell you this, if it feels impossible right now for you to go teach your child to listen to their intuition because you don't even know what that means for yourself, I will always say this: stop worrying about the parenting. Completely ditch the idea of trying to be a better parent. Focus on yourself, focus on your self-healing, because once you learn to trust your intuition, there is no way that you're going to feel comfortable telling your child not to trust theirs, right? Once you learn to validate your own emotions, there is no way that you are going to tell your child or invalidate your child's feelings. You just won't do it because it's not you anymore. And that is really where holistic parenting comes in. It's not a thing that you do. Holistic parenting is not a thing that you do. So when people say it won't work for my child or whatever, it won't work for this kind of child, it will, because it's a way of being. It's a way of interacting. It's just a way of living your life. It's not a thing that you do. It's an essence, Loved your post on conscious parenting. What a treat. I accidentally found you live. Oh, awesome. Wonder Woman. Join the community, because then you can join me on Zoom and I can see your face. Okay, cool. So that was part of chapter 3. But like I said, I haven't even gotten through the whole thing because I really needed to stop and digest that for myself. What is trauma? Am I invalidating my own trauma? What is my role as a parent? How do I really make sure that I am a guide? How do I make sure that I'm almost like guiding myself? Because a lot of times, like, we just try to control behaviors, right? We just try to control. And so it's like a lot of this is releasing control. All right, so let's talk about how we're going to sort of apply, couldn't think of the word, how we're going to apply these lessons as we go through our week. Because remember, we don't want to just read this or hear this and say, okay, that sounds lovely. And we want to apply it to our life. We want to make changes here. So for me, I'm still going to be working on being present in the moment. I'm going to work on bringing myself into, like, what am I feeling? Not just logically what is happening. I can talk about and be logical about situations all day long, but what am I actually feeling? Validating those feelings. The other thing that I'm still working on, and I think this comes from chapter 1, is I'm still working on, like, making sure that I'm listening to me and not, like, reading the room and trying to meet everybody else's needs. Like, I'm trying to meet my needs in the moment, because I do have a tendency to people please. I have a tendency to, like, be like, oh, I really want to have a dance party. And then, like, I look around and everybody's, like, on their phones or something. And I'm just like, no, I don't really want to have a dance party. Never mind. Like, I'll just go on my phone. But I'm not meeting my need. Or even today, I want to join this gym. So I got all ready for the gym. And I'm just like, well, what if my kids don't want to go in the gym daycare? And what if my husband doesn't want me to go to the gym because I could be more productive at home? Or what if and nobody is telling me that they have those needs. They're all like, let's go. But I am, like, preemptively trying to meet everybody's needs that they haven't even expressed to me. So that's one thing that I am still really working on this week, is sort of making sure that I'm meeting my own needs, not harming others in my way, but meeting my own needs. Um, and then just really thinking about like what this journey means to me. What is the message that I'm trying to portray to my kids and to my community and everything like that. Um, if anybody wants to share sort of what their intention for the coming week is, that would be awesome. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to end the live here. I'll stay a couple more minutes on TikTok. So next week, if you have the book club schedule, you can pretty much disregard it because, like I said, I didn't get to do the whole chapter 3. I want to do second half of chapter 3 next week instead of moving on to chapter 4. But I'll post that in the community. If you are watching this on replay, feel free to like comment in the book club group of the community. Nobody else sees that. So it doesn't matter how many hundreds of community members we have in the main community. I think there's 12 or 15 in book club. And when you post in book club, those are the only people that will see your post. That way, the only people who are chiming in or getting to see your vulnerability or helping you are people who are on this journey with us. So just so that you know that. Okay, enjoy the rest of your Sunday or whatever day it is when you're watching this on replay. I will have this up in the community shortly. Let me know if you need anything. You know, you can message me or comment on the wall in the book club in the community. And I always get back to you within 24 hours, okay? Happy healing.